The typical patient is smart in everything but school. Anyone can experience vision training. It's not only for children with learning issues or stroke patients. Vision is learned. Nobody knows that. The 1 in 4 children who have a visually related learning issue, now it's about 2 out of 4, diagnoses of ADHD or dyslexia. Let's go straight to the brain. The eyes are sending the message first to the brain. Patients with strokes, we can reroute information and we can teach them a different way of seeing. 75 to 80% of all sensory input is vision. And what we take in is making us frenetic because we actually don't know how to process what we need and what we don't need.
Welcome to the Vitalist Podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist.
I'm here with Dr. Donna Dean, a functional optometrist who does vision therapy, and I am very excited to help us gain a deeper appreciation for our eyes, because I feel like it is another part of our body that we may take for granted. We just feel like we wake up and we see, but Dr. Donna is here to educate us about how our eyes are really an extension of our brain. And we are going to be getting into a lot of different topics that's super exciting. But first, I would love for you to share your story and take us back to 10th grade.
Thank you, first of all, for having me on your podcast. It's really exciting, and I love to share the information because all my patients that show up always say to me, how did we not know about you? And it's this never-ending story of, well, I'm not sure if I can get the word out myself. You know, we need a team, but it's a good start. So thank you. So I was in South Africa. My story began when I lived in South Africa. I grew up in South Africa, and I came to America when I was 17. But prior to that, my years in South Africa, I was a national swimmer. So I swam for South Africa. I trained 5 hours a day, and it was my life since I was 9 years old. And I was also a straight A student, surprisingly, until 8th grade. And after 8th grade, I couldn't keep up, and I still swam, but my parents were thinking that I wasn't participating correctly in the school. And I explained to them, I am working really hard. I'm just not keeping up. So I kept doing my thing, working hard. And when you take your matriculation exams in South Africa in 12th grade, the whole country writes these formal examinations, and you write them in government buildings. And it's really traumatic because the results are printed in the newspaper.
Oh, wow.
So, and it's sad because there are many suicides that happen. In fact, a dear friend of mine committed suicide, and I had to sit in front of his empty desk for about a week and a half because it happened so soon into our matriculation exams. And I knew that I just had to get out. And there's a higher grade level and a lower grade level, kind of like AP maybe, but I converted everything to lower grade. I'm like, just let me get out, because when I convert my scores in San Diego, in America, they will look better. This is what I said. So I got out, and I didn't make the front page of the newspaper. Absolutely not. I didn't get any A's. But I knew that I was coming to America, so I came over. And when I came, I knew that I needed to apply to college, undergrad. So I did that. And I truly don't know how I got in, and I don't know how I got out. It took 5 years. I went to San Diego State, and it was awful. I remember getting a tutor for every biochem, every class I needed, because my major was biology. And when I graduated, I thought, well, the next step, I wanted to get to medical school, but I didn't want medical school per se because I didn't want to be a 24/7 doctor. So we looked at a few things. I remember my parents and I said, I'm going to be an optometrist. So I applied to optometry school, but my grades were terrible. And I met a doctor who needed some research done in his practice. Thankfully, he was an optometrist. I'm like, I'll do it. And I do believe that I spoke my way into optometry school. So I ended up in the New England College of Optometry, and it was truly the hardest 4 years of my life. I couldn't stay awake when I studied. I kept falling asleep during tests. I figured out that if I went to the gym, which was down the street where I used to stay, I could just exercise on a bike and read the information. But they didn't say that I was actually studying it. I was just reading it. So I became almost the class clown because people knew that I would fall asleep and they'd be like, go and ask Donna the question because she probably doesn't know. She probably fell asleep. It really was traumatic. When you're in optometry school, you have 3 sets of boards. The first set is just 1 year's worth of work, and that was doable. Then there's the second part, which is 2.5 years worth of work. And then there's the clinicals, which I got 100% in the clinicals, doing an eye exam, understanding how to talk to patients. That was no problem. The second set of boards, I didn't fail it once. I did not fail it twice. I failed it 3 times. It's kind of unheard of. I went to a different state for every time I had to take it during optometry school because I didn't want the colleagues below me to see that I was still taking part 2. So when I graduated, I graduated from the New England College of Optometry, but I did not have my license. So I could not see patients. So we had a huge graduation party. And my mom and I looked at my mom and were like, no one knows what we know. I'm not qualified to do this work. And I didn't know really how I was going to proceed until a couple of weeks later, I went to an event and met a behavioral optometrist who came rushing up to me and said, oh my God, I heard you've graduated. We're so excited. We need new doctors. There's a clinic opening up in San Diego, the first ever nonprofit clinic that's been donated by a family whose child went through vision therapy. And we would really love you to join us because we're going to be doing this clinic first ever in the country. Are you in? And I swallowed and I said, I had a whisper in his ear and I said, Bob, I did not pass my boards. And he looked at me and he said, whoa, I've never heard of that. He said, well, yeah, because I failed it 3 times. He said, well, I've seriously never heard of this. He said, well, how about if you come to my office, the new clinic, come and see the new clinic and let's do an eye exam and let's see what's going on. So that week, as soon as I could, I went to go over to his office and checked it out. And it was really sweet and special. And I did an eye exam and he doing his thing. And halfway through, he stops and he says, I do not know how you got through school. And at that point, I looked at him and I said, do you mean to tell me that I'm not stupid? And he said, I probably might be meeting the most tenacious person I've ever met. And I said, well, is there anything you can do to help me? And I said, I have been diagnosed with ADHD, put on medication, and I really don't like it. I have met with a cognitive therapist to help me study because I'm thinking something's wrong with me. He said, you have a vision condition that's very common, that your brain and your eyes are not working together. So everything you read is not making the connection. So then you have to reread it. And after the 4th time of rereading it, you probably fall asleep. And my mouth dropped. And I said, okay, what can I do? And he said, I'm going to give you this gift. I'm going to have you meet with Linda, my wife, who does vision therapy, and she's been doing it for 35 years. And how about if you do it twice a week with her for 6 months, take the boards and see how you feel. And it was a gift, truly a gift. And I did this with him for 6 months. It was the most beautiful experience. I've never had a training like this before. And I took the boards for the 4th time and I said to my parents, I'm like, if this doesn't work, I'm doing fashion design. This is not my thing. So I took the boards for the 4th time. I scored almost a perfect score. And I made a promise and a vow to all children that this is truly what I need to be doing. So I know that there are so many kids that went through the same thing I did. There are so many adults that went through the same thing that I did. And yet the adults compensated differently. And the 1 in 4 children who have a visually related learning issue, now it's about 2 out of 4, they are the same adults who have the same issue. They just figured out how to do something different. And many adults, I find, are doing something that they probably really wouldn't want to do, but they're only doing it because it's what gives them the success. So I worked with Bob Sanick for, bless his soul, I think he's crossing over as we speak. So it's a tough time right now for him. But I worked with him for 4 years, and after the 4th year, he just kicked me out and said, go start your own practice. So 25 years later, I am still loving what I do every day and really just trying to educate people and help them understand that we can all, optimize our potential. We don't have to just be. We can be so much more.
So when I think of going to an optometrist, I think of getting my eyesight checked and doing the letterboard on the wall. What was Bob doing for you that allowed him to pause halfway through the exam and know that you weren't sensory processing visual information?
There is regular optometry, and what they do and what we were trained to do was to do eye exams and treat disease. And then there's ophthalmology on one side who treats disease and does all the surgeries. The behavioral optometry or developmental optometry group, there are only about 950 of us in the country, maybe 1,000. I don't know now what the numbers are, but they're not a lot. We look at all the aspects of how the eyes work together as a team, how they focus together, how they look near and far, how they converge to form a single point so that when we're looking at something, such as a word, it is clear and single. So we're able to look at the mechanics of the eyes to see that everything is working, as well as the perception of how we interpret that information through our brain, not only the resolution of vision acuity. So when you only look at the way we see clearly and what's happening in the back of the eye, you leave out this whole array of visual tools and skills that are overlooked because they're not trained to know what to do with it. And I'm even learning now that looking at the eye, in the back of the eye, is really, we're looking at, it's a symptom of so much more. It truly is a symptom. Because if you look at the eye, you can see blood pressure issues, you can see heart issues, you can see cancers, you can see HIV, you can see all these things. And if you look at the eye, you know exactly what's going on in the body. So you get so much more. And I feel blessed to be able to look at the perception of the person and realize, wow, how are they translating the world they're living in? What's their reality like? And how can their reality be more optimal?
How do you define eyesight versus vision?
Okay, so picture a smartphone and a cell phone, a flip phone from like not so long ago, 20 years ago, right? So I would describe a eyesight as a flip phone where it really just allows you to make a phone call, and eyesight just really allows you to see 20 feet away clearly, or in front of you 16 inches when you read, right? Vision for me is like a smartphone where all these applications on your phone are elements of vision, and you can tap into all these elements of vision if you wake up your visual system. So visual memory, visual sequential memory for, remembering things, visual tracking, visual convergence, visual closure, visual spatial relations. Where am I in space? Balance, coordination, peripheral vision. These are all applications of a visual system that we all have potential to awaken inside of us.
So if there's a lack of coordination between all of these applications, what do you see that in your patients that come through your door?
The typical patient is a patient who is smart in everything but school. They are intelligent, but they can't apply themselves. So they can see, but they can't read. They can see, but they can't comprehend. They can see, but they don't track. That's the basic. Those are our little kids that we see that they touch everything when they walk into a room because they're using their tactile sense, not vision. Because before we delve any deeper, we'll just plant these two precious seeds, is that vision is learned. Nobody knows that. we're aware that speech is learned because if someone has a speech impediment or a lisp, you can hear it, therefore you know that they have an issue. But vision doesn't show up that way. And a lot of people tend to go straight to diagnoses of ADHD or dyslexia, or let's go straight to the brain. But but what's happening is the vision, the eyes are sending the message first to the brain. So you have to check the visual system so that we know exactly then how the brain interprets that information.
Can you help me unpack the development of vision? Like, take me back to a baby is born. How important is it the way that a baby comes into the world?
Vision is, so vision is learned. We know that. And 75 to 80% of all sensory input is vision.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, especially when we're not taught how to take it in visually. Okay, so I'm going to leave that thought just because it relates to the babies as well. So the babies come into the world, and at birth, depending on how their birth is, I'm starting to realize that our intuition is almost the first sense that we encounter, but yet I feel like it's removed from us because of the way the babies get held and handled. And so when babies are born, it's so important for them to nurture their visual system on their own accord. But yet as moms, and especially first-time moms, we hold them, we don't allow them to discover their space as much. So a lot of times I just did a lecture on babies and developmental, and we had babies rolling all over the floor and like rolling balls, and so that they're learning to look far away. If you put them on the floor, you want to put things all over, so they learn to expand their peripheral vision. So what we want to do for babies is we want to help them develop a visually guided motor movement system. So where they look first, then they move. Many times you'll see babies just grabbing, just like this, and without them looking. And it's amazing how a basic skill like that, learning to look, builds such an important foundation for vision later on. Now, I'm going to bring that in with the question that I was describing before with the child that I see, the types of patients that I see. The other part of vision is also patients with strokes and patients who have TBIs. Those patients have a different way of how they now have to navigate. And so we can reroute information and we can teach them a different way of seeing. So there's multiple ways to do this. The child that's smart in everything but school, the baby on the floor that hasn't yet developed a visual system, they can see, but if you prepare them for a hierarchy of more visual skills, they will be way more apt in accessing information more efficiently because they're just going to have this subconscious leading of their vision. They will know to look if they're taught how. And then there's the brain injury patient or the stroke patient who has to now relearn how to channel the visual information in a different way.
Really interesting. So a baby is born via C-section or a vaginal delivery. Is there a difference in how they come into the world and how it affects their vision development in the beginning?
A baby who's born vaginally will move through the birth canal and will access all the primitive reflexes. And I'm sure this is your world, will integrate all these primitive reflexes so that the body is ready to receive information. So the right side integrates with the left and the top half integrates with the bottom. So I also remind my patients, please don't let your babies walk at least before they've crawled for 2 or 3 months. They need that fundamental bilateral integration step because so many patients I see have a visual disorganization up here. But if they don't know what their body is doing, this visual system is not going to have a stable system with which to build upon. So I have to go back and redevelop. We have to reintegrate primitive reflexes and reintegrate organization of the body. And that's how I see the disorganization up here. So a baby that's born with a C-section baby doesn't have the opportunity to develop those primitive reflexes. So for me, it's a red flag when I see a patient who's a C-section baby because they do tend to have learning issues. They do tend to have motor issues, but nothing you can't go back and relearn. It's just that they didn't have that birthing experience that gave them these innate, subconscious, subtle movements to develop a foundation that they then can utilize when there's higher level learning happening. So a lot of times these kids can get through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but once the level of schooling sadly gets more and more, their visual system can no longer keep up. Their body can no longer keep up. These are the kids that are not sitting in a chair and, maybe having temper tantrums and not able to get back into flow. I mean, there is just so many things that are showing up that I believe are so important, like what you do. Allowing the body to get to a parasympathetic place where they're not in fight or flight all the time. And that's another thing that I see with these kids who don't go through the vaginal birthing process.
So what age is the visual system matured at?
Never. Well, it's constant. I work with a 75-year-old patient who has Alzheimer's. And it's amazing to see the process of he's losing his memory, but my whole thing is, how can he lose what he didn't know he had? So we're waking up his visual system and using parts of his brain that he's never used before, that he's actually able to remember things because we're waking up a system that was just dormant. So I don't believe there's and that's my big push now, is that anyone can experience vision training. It's not only for children with learning issues or stroke patients. I believe it's for anyone who just wants to age gracefully and get the most out of life.
So it's really not like a mechanical eyesight thing. It's really about a brain process.
Yes. The mechanics are there. There are some, there is a diagnosis that I'm sure people have heard about called convergence insufficiency, where the eyes don't come together when you read, which makes things a little bit harder to focus. So your eyes have to keep pulling in and keep pulling in and keep pulling in. And actually 30% of children who are diagnosed with ADHD have that binocular challenge. So that is a mechanical issue, but there's also so many perceptual issues that come along with that. So it's both. It's not muscle training. It's training the eyes where to look. So it goes back to the brain. So it's a definite brain-eye connection that produces different mechanics and different perception. So a lot of patients come to me and say, well, I have a very weak right eye muscle. And it's just a brain mismatch, a brain-eye misinformation mismatch. And so we make sure what I do is I help train so that the eye and the brain speak together efficiently. So vision training really is about visual efficiency. So I challenge my patients. I say to them, okay, how do you feel today? And they'll all say, oh, I'm tired. I'm like, okay, I'm going to challenge you that when you leave here today, you're actually not going to feel more tired. You're going to feel less tired because we're going to use our vision instead of our brains. So I help them connect that that vision is their leading sense, and so that their brain can receive information more efficiently. So they're actually more empowered and more efficient.
Can you walk me through an exercise that you would guide a client like this through?
Yes. Okay. What should we do? Let's do peripheral vision.
Okay.
So peripheral vision is like my baby because it affects everything. As we age, our world gets smaller and smaller, and a lot of people who get older get more nervous about taking steps. Then there's the normal mid-age group where everyone's just running around frantic and like losing it because there's just so much information coming in at us. And then there's the children who are on the soccer field and have no idea where they need to go or be. And then there's the reading group, which is anyone in first grade up learning this new world of reading, and they're reading one word at a time because their parents tell them to focus. So I'll just bring a little bit about soft focus, which is kind of the opposite. And I think like everything we're learning, there's so much that what we were told is not right or what we're told is different. Like we're learning that our world is like kind of turning upside down. The softer you look, the more efficient you become. Well, no, that's not true because my mom told me I have to focus. And I'm telling them, oh, no, no, no. The harder you focus, the more you're going to miss the mark. And you're not going to be able to maintain that focus for the whole day. You're going to be exhausted after 20 minutes. So it's fun to play around with periphery because it affects the child and it affects the 100-year-old man or woman, right? So with periphery, you can just, we could all just do this. We could look straight ahead. And what I normally do is I have my patients balance. So I'm like, look straight ahead and let's balance on one foot. And so they'll balance on one foot and then they'll balance on the other foot. And then they're like, well, that was easy. But I'm watching them and there's wobbling and there's wiggling going on. And then what I'll say to them is, okay, all we have to do is look straight ahead. And you can do this right now. Just be aware of your periphery or your room in your right side and be aware of what's on the left side. And all you're doing is being aware of it. You're just telling your brain, I'm looking here, but I'm also looking to the right and I'm also looking to the left. And nobody teaches us how to use central periphery at the same time. Everyone tells us either use central vision when you're doing something and you want to focus, or when you're driving, you're supposed to use central peripheral vision, but nobody teaches us how to use central peripheral vision at the same time. So when I have my patients look straight ahead, now we've split the focus 33, 33, 33. So it's a very different way of looking. And there's a rule. Everyone thinks everything must be clear all of the time. But you're not going to be clear over there and you're not going to be clear over there. You're only going to be clear with what you're looking at. And once your brain accepts that, which is a perception, a way to learn and accept what you're seeing. And so when your brain knows how to integrate that feeling, all of a sudden the world is a happier place. So it does help you to relax a notch. It does help you to soften your vision a little bit. It does help you to balance 100%. You can try that and see how much easier it is. But what it also does is it sets your brain in motion of seeking that feeling more and more throughout the day, because it will help to not get overloaded with information that we're being bombarded with. It'll help with reading because eventually once you learn it, you're going to be able to read more than one word at a time. So your reading speed increases. It becomes more easier and effortless. And it just allows you to just be in the world in a different way. And it's such a simple activity and we don't even think about it. But it's like, I tell my patients this, you came into my office with vision like this, and I'm going to show you that all of this belongs to you. All of this belongs to you. That's how much we have and we don't even know we have it.
First of all, I love the soften the gaze, because if you go into a meditation class and they want you to soften your body, they say soften your gaze. And the vision softening softens the body response.
Yes.
And I think the eyes in our world is very much involved in neuroception. So you're using your eyes to constantly scan for danger, for life threat, or to look for moments of safety. So how much is unprocessed emotional experiences or trauma or challenges in your past really affecting how you see the world in the moment?
So it's really interesting because I just had a meeting with a shaman. I'll just go off the cuff. And the shaman told me that I was blind in a past life. And it makes a lot of sense because my desire to see everything in this world is so driven by the art that I do and the work that I do. And what I tell my patients is that it's not what you see where the vision work is, it's what you don't see. Because you don't see periphery, but you can feel it and know how to integrate it and use it to maximize your vision. You don't see your you can bring your eyes together to converge, but you don't see the convergence, but you do see that once your brain comes together, that your eyes can then maintain a focal point. The focusing system, you don't see accommodation, but your brain does it. So I think that piece was really profound for me, and I just heard that, but it makes total sense, especially the work that I do, because I feel like the trauma that is buried inside all of us, we don't in this lifetime, we don't know where we put it per se. And a lot of times I will see patients that have vision issues, and I do ask them a lot of times, like, what do you not want to see? Because there's something subconscious that our bodies do to protect us in the moment.
And it reminds me of, did you ever see that experiment where they had 4 people, I think they were passing a ball around, and they had a guy in a gorilla suit walk through the room and nobody saw him because they were so focused on what they were doing.
That is so fascinating. And, you know, that kind of also, that's funny. Yes, I have heard that. And it's kind of trippy, right? People are becoming more and more narrow. I don't think, and like I said before, if we don't know what we have, we don't know how to access it. And all of us have the ability to have a visual system that allows us so much more efficiency in our lives and happiness. I truly believe that, but none of us know how to access it. And what if we could? What if it was the norm? What if vision classes were just part of first grade?
Vision is this sensory sense coming into the brain. But more importantly, I think what you're alluding to is that there's an interpretation to what it means for us.
Yes. The crazy thing is, it's our dominant sense, and we don't use it as our dominant sense. And so if we don't have the ability to access all of our vision, we don't take in all of what's exposed to us. But what we take in is making us frenetic because we actually don't know how to process what we need and what we don't need. And I see that with my children, my younger children, and I see it with my stroke patients because they're really similar once you've had a stroke, depending on the severity of the stroke. It's just amazing. But what's so beautiful is how easy it is to train the brain. Just by talking about periphery and just creating that awareness of using both sides at the same time as looking straight ahead, so the brain's already turned on to a new way of being. So it's fun, and it's really fun. So check this out. If I show you this, what do you see?
I see like a little world on the lower left side.
Okay.
And then a little bit of clouds and like this small animal coming in towards the world.
Okay. So now you and everybody else is probably going to see a completely different thing. Now, we're navigating in a world where everyone has a different perception. But there's a certain element of what we need to know what is real in the world. And I'm really stepping on light tracks here because everyone's reality is different. I totally get it. And I'm kind of out there in that realm. But if we keep missing what's really there, the cup, the phone, everything that's basic, and we're always missing it a little bit, we're always going to be slightly off kilter in the reality of our world as we know it. And I'm just giving you a very superficial framework. So here's how quickly the brain can train. If I told you what this is, you might never be able to see what you saw because it's so definitive of what this becomes. So I'm not saying we all need to be on the same track because individuality and creating, that is important in our lives. but it's really interesting how quickly we can change perception.
I love that.
Okay, so this is a cow. Here are the ears. Here's the snout.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And there's the snout. Can you see that?
I see the cow staring right at me.
As clear as day, right? Isn't that wild? So that's just an example of how quickly you can train the brain. You just have to create the environment where the brain can learn. And it's always going to learn. It's always going to change. And the more we give it, the more it expands. I mean, we know that, right? If you lose it, if you don't use it, you lose it. But if you don't know you have it, you don't know what you're losing.
Yeah. That's just so cool, because it's kind of like it's what you see versus what your mind perceives, which is different for everyone.
Yes. But like it's that when there's a curb and you take a step and you think, oh, I saw the curb, but now it's short. And so you miss the curb. It's those things where your reality has to match that, because then you can hurt yourself or fall or trip, so it's those definitive things that you probably want to tie in your perception, right? So, but if it's constantly a little off, then you're always going to be off. And then you wonder why the world isn't so kind or easy.
When we first connected, we talked about visualization. And you said to me, no one teaches us how to visualize. And you gave the example of, you're in sports and your basketball coach might be like, visualize the shot, but no one teaches us how to visualize. Can you break down why that's so important? And then how can we learn to visualize? Because I actually have a friend and she said to me, I can't visualize. I see nothing.
Visualization is the pinnacle of vision. So the bottom is the primitive reflexes. And those primitive reflexes I do work with, because I believe that in order for visualization to be received by the body, all of these, there's a hierarchy of vision skills that's required to get to this point of visualization. And a lot of times when I work with my patients, depending on how old they are, you can't get to all of that visualization because of the age that they're at. They can only get to a certain level. But what I notice is, as the adults and parents keep coming to me, they're like, I can't remember. I keep losing track. So for an adult, I think visualization is key, a young adult even. And what that is the visualization tool of vision is taking us from memorization, which is the logic thinking brain, to visualization, which is using vision. And for me, vision is so much more accurate and efficient and faster to access information than using logic. Believe it or not, I tell my kids, my patients, don't use thinking, don't use logic. Thinking will always be there as the final, okay, this is it. But if you don't access vision first, then you could spin your wheels and trying to figure it out. And I work with a lot of first-year college students and 12th graders that I see a huge shift in the ability that they're able to use vision rather than logic, because logic is very limiting. Thinking is very limiting. Using your brain is limiting. Vision is just so expansive that you can access it. You can access harder information using vision once you've developed the basic visual skill using that same methodology. It's crazy. So visualization is vision related versus memorization, which is just this rote repetition, calling out, using your auditory, and probably using only 25%. So many times children who use mnemonics to remember things or just repeat through memorization will never remember anything the next day, because it just went through the auditory channel and they just said it. Once you develop a formal visual image of what you see, that information will be with you for as long as you want it to be on the wall. So we do exercises where we put things on the walls, we put images on the walls, And the kids want to stay in the same place and say, oh, I see a car on that wall. And no, I force them to channel to get to their bodies to look at what they created on the wall, so they can create multiple things on the wall, and then they can learn to see those images. And then at the end of the session, I would go back and say, let's go see what we saw. And I prove it to them that they still saw those 4 images that they put on the wall, or 8 images, or 12 images, or 16 images on the wall. And the images are still there because they created a visual picture of each one. So visualization is being able to, it's part like imagination, but it's like learning to recreate information that is basically in the back of our head where the visual cortex is. I'm teaching patients to project it forward in front of them. So they take it from visual cortex to literally in front of them, so that you're not like Rolodexing back in your head, retrieving old information. It's right there. We can play a little game to develop visualization, but visualization affects comprehension, because when you're reading, if you don't visualize, if you don't convert the words into an image or a vision, you're just remembering a story based on the words. That's like awful. That you can't retain an entire book unless you have a photographic memory. You won't remember the words. So you have to convert those words into an image. And the crazy thing is, we're visual beings. We are visual beings. So it's fun to hear patients tell me, oh, I'm way more auditory learner than visual. I'm like, oh, wait, we're going to turn your vision on and reverse that. And then I'll have patients say, I'm way more visual, but I don't know how to use my vision. I want to see pictures, but I don't know how, right? So I'm like, okay, we're going to teach you. So visualization, it helps with spelling. It helps with comprehension, spelling, remembering things. But it's also an awareness or a consciousness, because of course you're going to forget where you put the keys if you don't pay attention to where you put the keys. So it's kind of like, and if you retrace your steps, well, if you don't visualize what you did, you can't retrace your steps because it was just done so haphazardly. So vision and visualization and visual skills, it really is a form of consciousness. It's developing an awareness, creating a new awareness of something that's God-given within us, and we get to play with that and expand it and teach it.
Going to kids, some of the first things we learn is counting to 10 and the alphabet. Do you have any tips to parents? Like, because I feel like we just have our kids memorize, like, what comes after 2? It's 3.
I think new parents, and I really love educating new parents about how visual we can help our children develop, how we can help our children develop a visual sense, because it's all rote learning. I mean, we are so proud when our children learn the ABCs, but they don't even know what an A looks like, right? So if they learned what an A looks like or a B looks like, they're not going to have those learning issues or reading issues or memorization issues when they have to put the letter together to form the word, to form the sentence, to form the paragraph, because they're just they learned their letters through rote repetition, which is, there's no vision involved. So now what I have is I have my patients do back spelling, where we write the letters on their back so that they can feel it, and it forces them to visualize, which is another great exercise for my stroke patients, because we have to bring them back into a world of visualization. So that's a very good activity for kids to learn to start to visualize. Or you write letters in the sky so that they can learn that there's this imaginary letter, and I say, what color are you going to paint it? And I have this whole neon color palette of paints that they love to choose, a color, because you want to create a color and a paint or sticky string or something that gets them to expand their creative mind. It's definitely a problem with our children that we're teaching them a lot of rote repetition. And my job is to just interject gently and bring in the learning through vision, because it's going to be way more efficient.
So what other things are impairing our visual development? Obviously, there's the way that you come into the world, developmental milestones, but what else in our modern world is affecting our development?
Makes me so sad. Well, I hope your team is on board with my team, but our world is toxic, and I think the electromagnetic frequencies that are bombarding our earth right now are truly affecting our children. We didn't have as much bombardment growing up, so I think our DNA is much more rigorous. Not that we're not getting affected by it at all, we are. But I've noticed that over the past 10 years, the amount of time it takes for me to work with a patient and get them to the point that I would like for them to graduate is taking much longer. And so I'm noticing that instead of 30, 35, 40 hours, it's now 50, 60 hours of training that is needed. So it's a little bit more intense. And I find the kids are, they're more disrupted. They need more organization. And I have beautiful patients and, doing the best they can and really committed. But it's just what they're coming into the world with, and the food is an issue. We don't have good food, no matter how good of a parent we can to try and do this. I mean, I try grow my own lettuce grows and, but it's hard. There's a lot of the rush of the world makes these kids, I don't know. I see some kids coming in with fast food before they come see me. So I think it's everything. I think we're just in a really interesting time.
How does screen time affect eyes?
It does many things. It's not only the blue light. There's a lot of people who say blue light affects both of you. You and I should be sitting with orange glasses on right now. We really should.
We have them at home. I just don't have them here.
I know I don't have them here, but it's noticeable. I mean, I love walking around the house with orange lenses at night because I find these fluorescents are incredibly fatiguing, and they don't make me see clearly. So I think for kids who are under fluorescent lights in school all day, it's a detriment to them. And if you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what calm is, but you've only known what chaos feels like, you don't know that your brain is missing calm. So fluorescent lights are crazy. But again, as you were asking me about the screens, is that when children are on screen time for long periods of time, their visual systems don't flex. So their focus system stays in one place for hours and hours and hours. So when they look out, it looks like they can't see the board. But so then they go to an optometrist and they get glasses for nearsightedness. But it's not a nearsighted problem. It's a focusing problem. It's a movement issue. It's a flexibility issue. So it really can affect you. And kids who are little, like babies who are looking at parents' phones, I would absolutely try and say it's not optimum for development at all, because it then brings their world in closer. And then these kids, the basic visual system will start to balance out at 6 years of age. It's called emmetropicization. A child is born with high amounts of hyperopia, and then they'll settle into something and it'll ebb and flow until about 6. For the basic visual skills of looking. But if you interfere, I feel like the screens and the phones, they're interfering with nature versus vision training is nurturing with nature. The Apple Watches and then those earbuds too, they're not my favorite thing. So, I mean, I'm telling you what I tell my kids. They were not allowed to buy an Apple Watch, and I don't really want them to have those earbuds. I just feel like our brains are so precious. I feel like that's really where I am right now, as I'm just realizing the tenderness and the beauty and the intelligence of our bodies. And my goal is to just help people realize what a beautiful system we've been given, what a vessel we've been given, and we really should be taking care of it, not abusing it or just taking it for granted. And so I feel like we're never too late to start that process. And I really think it's important for us to help our children realize that, because we just get in the suit and off we go. I'm like, wait a minute. There's some real things of beauty in here that we need to be taking care of. Maybe it's because I love life so much. I just want to be here forever.
It's not a bad thing. Is there anything that people can do if they don't feel like they have a learning difficulty or a behavioral challenge? Is there any holistic practice they can do to nurture their vision on a daily basis so that they can step in their fullest potential?
It's hard for them to do it without taking a workshop or learning, because they don't know what to turn on and how to turn it on, if that makes sense. But like I mentioned, the periphery, it's really a fantastic tool to practice and play with. And even just looking straight ahead and wiggling your fingers in front of you just allows you to soften your gaze. So instead of just being aware of the left and the right, you could bring in your finger. So it brings the periphery in a little bit more in a tangible space. So it's not so far out there. But these things are basic and easy and can just allow you a different way of being, because there's so many things to do. There are so many wonderful things to do that I'm not, it's a lot of different skills that you have to switch your brain to do. But periphery is just an amazing beginning.
And then what about when you worked with your mentors and you went through all your vision training? What did you notice shift mentally, emotionally, spiritually, having gone through that visual training?
So it's an amazing process, because I'm just going to say this. Every single patient teaches me one more thing about the world that I could then see it from. It's just fascinating. Like, I don't feel like I'm the one telling the patient to do something, because it really is their own visual system. I'm just creating the environment and the space for them to make that shift. So yes, we do multiple different activities, but I explain to parents, because I have a lot of siblings, that I could be doing the same activity with each child, but receiving a different output. So when I went through vision therapy, I'll never forget the moment where I could be as raw as I needed to be. And it was the place where I didn't feel judged, because I had no idea what I was seeing. And it allowed me to just look in my fullest expression and just be in that space without having any expectations of needing to be perfect or right or not. And I'll remember when I was in optometry school, one of my professors, I asked a question and he looked at me as if to say, wait, you're supposed to know this answer. And I was thinking, wait, I'm in optometry school to learn what I need to know, because if I knew what I knew, I wouldn't be here. So I really do hold that really dear to my heart when I work with my patients, whether they're 6 years old or 96 years old, because it really is important to just be allowed to be in that space and not have to know what you see. Because if you knew what you were seeing, you wouldn't be there. So I really do create that space for my patients. And I noticed that was a profound moment in my life when I could just be. And what it did was it opened up the space for me, and it gave me less stress. So I was just being and allowing my vision to help me make those connections in a way that it was just so expansive. It really is interesting how much stress shuts down our vision. All of my patients are stressed. I mean, they're struggling at school or home or college or, or the patient with Alzheimer's. Everyone is coming from a stressed place. So it's my job to allow them to leave that stress behind so that they can then come in and learn and rewire in a different way, so that they can take that tool home with them and then utilize it and keep expanding that way. So for me, that was a huge take home of how it happened to me. And I do that with my patients. And it's a constant growth for me. I'm watching them, I'm gaining information from them. And it's amazing. So I'm still learning from them. It's fascinating.
Well, any last closing remarks or thoughts?
Our vision is so much more than what we think. And I think it allows us to be ourselves. We're so much more than what we think. Our body is so connected. Our vision isn't separate from the rest of us. And so it's really kind of something to think about, how we are what we see. It's crazy. And our soul is the window to our eye, which means if you connect with your vision, you do connect at a soul level.
All right. For anyone listening, how can they work with you? Do you see virtual clients if you're not in San Diego?
I do. I have many that I see and I Zoom. So I think the best is I gave you my website, but my website's great. You can always email me. I think there's a form on my website that you can connect with me.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor having you here.
So fantastic. Thank you for sharing you, and thank you for allowing me to share this gift of vision and expansion and just being the best we can be.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.